Okay, so to make the chicken pot pie crust, we are going to use 2.5 cups of flour. I have 2 sticks of butter here that I just cubed, and this is chilled butter. And we're going to basically cut the butter into the flour. I also added a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We're going to cut it until the mixture kind of resembles coarse crumbs. Now that we have our butter cut into our flour, you can tell it's pretty well incorporated. We have a cup of ice water, 1/2 cup of ice water, and we're going to start adding the water a tablespoon at a time, and then mixing it just until the dough forms. So we're just going to do this. You might not need all of the 1/2 cup, so we're going to measure out how much we're going to need. So I ended up using about 10 to 12 tablespoons, and I'm just going to split this dough in half because one is going to be for the bottom of the chicken pot pie and one will be for the top. Now I'm a crust girl, that's why I like crust on the bottom and top, but if you want it just for the top, then just have this recipe. I'm going to cover it in saran wrap and place in the fridge for at least 4 hours. It would be better overnight, but 4 hours minimum. And into the fridge they go. So we're gonna get started on the filling. I have 1 chicken breast that I cut up into small cubes, about a cup if you measure it, and then I have 1 cup of carrots and 2 cups of celery that I just diced up. I'm going to add 2 cups of chicken broth into this mixture. Have some warming up on the side. Roughly 2 cups, there we go. And then we're going to bring this to a boil and boil it for about 15 minutes. Now after 15 minutes, I'm adding 1/3 of a cup mix of peas and corn. And then I'm also going to add 1 can of potatoes that I just cubed and diced. I'm going to mix this well, so everything's combined, just like that. If you have fresh potatoes, you can put them in with the chicken while it's cooking, so it'll kind of boil along with it. But since I'm using canned and they're kind of already fork tender, I'm going to add it at this stage. Now I'm going to remove this off the heat and drain all the liquid and the veggies separately. Now what I'm going to do is strain that, which this is really cool because it'll save the broth because it's so jam-packed full of flavor. So we're just going to drain it, strain all the veggies and chicken. Now in a pan on medium heat, I'm going to melt 1/3 of a cup of butter, and to that we are going to be adding 2 cups of diced onions. Just gonna add that in there while that's melting. It's okay. We just want that onions to be a little bit translucent. We don't want to caramelize or brown them, so that's what we're going to do here. To this, I also added 1 tablespoon of pureed garlic. You can have minced garlic if you want, and then 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. We're not adding salt because we used Maggi chicken bouillon cubes, and that has salt in it. If you have regular unsalted chicken broth or low sodium chicken broth, you can taste test towards the end and then adjust for salt as necessary, maybe from 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of salt. But we're going to mix this well and wait till they get a little translucent. And then once they get translucent, we're going to add 1/3 of a cup of flour to kind of make a roux. So we're going to slowly add it. There we go. And then mix this well, cook out the flour taste. So I just added my chicken broth. I had 1 cup left over from the strained chicken broth that we boiled the veggies and chicken in. And then I put 1 extra cup of chicken broth I have some on the side warming in a little pot. We have it on medium heat. I'm going to turn that down a little to medium low. And now we're going to add in our milk and heavy cream. So to this, we're going to add our milk. That's half a cup of whole milk, and then I'm going to add half a cup of heavy whipping cream, and then we're going to mix this well until everything is combined. Now I lowered the heat a little to medium-low, and we're going to cook it until it becomes a little bit thick. Make sure all the flour mixture is combined with the broth and the milk and the heavy cream. Make sure there's no lumps. Let's just take that out. Come on, mush it in there. Now once it's thickened slightly, we're going to add our veggie and chicken mixture and fold everything in. Go, it looks so beautiful. And this is when you want to taste test for the amount of salt. If it's to your liking, you don't have to change a thing, but if you want to add a little bit of salt, you totally can, depending on how salty your chicken broth was. Now I also added 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning at this stage, and also half a teaspoon of thyme. And I also added 1 teaspoon of accent flavor enhancing seasoning. So these are the dishes that I'll be using. You can make one big pot pie, but since it's just 2 of us, I'm going to make one mini one for us to share, and then I'm going to freeze some. So I got these really cute tins, and I'm going to individually pack some pot pies. So whenever we're craving something warm and cozy, we could just pop it out of the freezer and bake it right in the tray and have fresh pot pie. So I'm just going to roll out one of the doughs, because we split it into 2, and then make our the bottom of the pie crust. So I just cut the dough into 4 little sections, and I'm going to take one of them and roll it into a ball, and then flatten it out into a circle. So we're just going to roll it out to like 1/8 of a millimeter thick. We're just gonna roll it out till it's like pretty thin. Not too thin, but a nice base crust size. Just like that. We want to make it as round as our whatever container that we are going to be using. So since I have this one, we're going to place it on the bottom, and then we're going to just trim out any excess. So I'm just going to trim all of that out. So I'm going to cover all the bottoms of all the pans that I'm going to be using until there's no more left, and I'm just going to poke the bottoms with a fork. I'm going to place it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 6 minutes, 4 to 6 minutes, and then take them out and let them cool. Once they're out of the oven, I just filled it with some chicken pot pie. I'm setting this to the side so I can cover them. So I'm going to brush the edges with some egg wash just so the pastry dough can stick. So just a light brushing. We're also going to use this egg wash to brush the tops of the pot pies. And then all we're going to do is cover them. Make sure it's really nice. And then, oh, you guys can't see. There you go. And then just cut them on the side. I'm going to leave a little bit over at the edge, and I'm going to make it pretty rustic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It looks so nice. They smell yummy. I also ended up getting 3 of these little mini containers out of the filling and the crust. If you make a big one, it'll probably just equal, you know, 1 big pot pie. Okay, there we go. I'm also going to make a slit on the top just so the steam can escape while cooking. It's a star shape, so it looks pretty. Maybe a little mini one. There we go. Beautiful. And then brush the top with some egg wash and pop it in the oven. I'm gonna do the rest of them and then I'll stick them in the oven. Okay, we have all our pot pies ready to go. I put them on a baking sheet just to make it easier to pop out of the oven. We're going to increase the temperature to 425 degrees and bake them for 30 to 45 minutes. And they just came out of the oven. If you can hear that, it has a really crispy crust, flaky. We got a little bit of an explosion here, but it's okay. And yeah, it looks delicious. It smells amazing in here, and it was super easy to make.